How do you suggest Congress and regulatory agencies develop a tailored and effective legislative framework that addresses the unique aspects of DeFi while also promoting innovation and mitigating potential risks?
Yeah, I think the hurdle right now is convincing people of the need to come up with a tailored approach. And we haven't even gotten to the stage of what that approach will look like. I think that, generally kind of the flow chart of, I think, policymakers' approach to DeFi begins with the question as to whether decentralization can even exist. That is not something that everyone is uniformly in agreement on. There are, for example, academics that think miners and validators should be regulated as financial intermediaries, and that decentralization's, it as a concept is essentially a red herring. So that's the first, I think, hurdle to get over. The second is, particularly in Congress, whether decentralization is a social good or a social ill. There was a speech given by former CFTC Commissioner Dan Berkowitz, who was then SEC General Counsel and has since left there, in 2020 or 2021, in which he argued that decentralization is a net social ill because of the fact that today policy objectives in financial services are generally accomplished via the regulation of custodial financial intermediaries. So I think that's the second question. I think that is certainly a question that is up to Congress to decide, and not one for regulators to be opining on. But that is a separate rabbit hole. So, we have this first hurdle of whether decentralization is possible, the second hurdle of whether decentralization is a social good. And then, if you get to step 3, which is, I think, generally where folks are right now, is, okay, decentralization is a thing. It's happening. How does it differ from the centralized intermediaries we know and love functionally? Because understanding the functional differences is how you can start thinking about what a tailored approach looks like. So I think that's the stage we're in right now. I think like a lot of the policy proposals that would be detrimental to the DeFi ecosystem are not intended to be something, proposals that would ban DeFi or apply CeFi regulations to DeFi. I think it's more of a educational issue necessitating, the work of explaining, okay, here's how a decentralized exchange works and the risks that it can present to consumers. Here's how DEX protocol works, and these are the differences. Here's, the fundamental functional differences between these two things. Obviously, it necessitates, a different approach. Simple analogy I like to use is there's this term, which is kind of my pet peeve in financial regulation, it's more of a saying, which is same activity, same risks, same rules. The idea being folks engaged in the same financial activity present the same risks and therefore should be regulated in the same way. I reject that out of hand because of returning to the simple analogy I alluded to. Just because, for example, transportation services, cars and airplanes, both get you from point A to point B, the same activity. They certainly don't present the same risks to consumers, and therefore, thank God, we don't regulate them in the same way. For a variety of reasons, we should be thankful that just because transportation services are transportation services, we don't regulate them in the same way. Importantly, one of those reasons being that if one took that approach to regulation, we would never have innovation of any variety, because an airplane would have to never exceed a 65-mile-an-hour speed limit. It's nonsensical. And I think that in the context of financial services, there's never, or at least in recent history, been such a fundamental innovation in how the problem can be solved, meaning software allowing people to engage in economic activities online is so revolutionary that folks haven't even considered, I think, in a lot of instances, the idea that there could be a car and an airplane in the context of financial services, so to speak. So I think that's kind of the stage we're in right now. Showing people how centralized financial intermediaries, be they in traditional finance or in crypto markets, and DeFi protocols function in such fundamental different ways, and then explaining why, convincing them, that necessitates just logically a different approach.
I really like how you outlined how the old saying about same activity, same risk, same rules doesn't apply in this case. It is so appealing to think about that
hmm
because at a certain level, it makes sense, but it depends about what level of granularity you're looking, I suppose, and then how you're looking at the specific technology.
Yeah, you can't just ignore how something functions, because how something functions is quite material to the risks and opportunities it presents to individuals.
It certainly is.